We hope everybody had a terrific Thanksgiving and that you didn't eat so much turkey that you passed out from the tryptophan overload and that you were on your couch asleep and slept through this episode, because you don't want to do that, Murph.
I might have.
You might have.
Who'd you talk to? Who said that?
I have pictures. Connie sent pictures of you from Atlanta, drool down the side of your face, watching the football game and not having any notion of what's going on.
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of the story of my life. But let me tell you, we've been eating very healthy before Thanksgiving, so that when Thanksgiving came around, all bets are off.
Damn right, baby. Opa, give me that feed bag. I'm ready to go to town. Well, hey guys, everybody, welcome back again. This is going to be our unique one that we did. We did that with Rick Rambo. We're doing this with Michael Martinez. So this is episode 124, part 3, and we'll get into that in a minute. But before we do that, some quick housekeeping. Hey, head on over to Apple, Spotify, hit those 5 stars. Really helps us out a lot, folks. Give us some feedback, give us comments. This actually raises our visibility in the rankings, allows more people to hear the podcast and see the written description so they can decide to join in like you folks did. So we really appreciate that. Also, head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. Murph, on that website, I took some of Michael's links and put it up there. You can see the links that are posted on YouTube of 2 of his shootings.
Oh, very good.
That'll show you folks what's in there. So make sure you go visit that. Also follow us on that thing called social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But you got to join us. Give the gift this year. This is the gift you can give. Give the gift of Game of Crimes. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We just got through doing our case of the month. We recorded that before doing this intro outro. And I tell you, I haven't seen you this fired up in a long time, Murph. You got fired up about one of these cases.
Well, I did. And the last one you spoke about, I mean, since, we had a little break in between recordings, you had another responsibility there to take care of. And I was sitting in my chair and I just can't get over it. I mean, it's just what happened to those 3 young ladies and that guy. And folks, please go check us out on Patreon. It's Case of the Month. It's outrageous. I'm just thinking of it from a father's point of view, man. If we keep talking about it, I'm going to get ticked off all over again.
Well, and what we're doing now is Murph and I we each pick out 2 stories we want to talk about. We don't go deep on them, but we go in about 15 minutes, but enough to get yourself fired up. And we were both fired up about our respective cases. So head on over to that patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We've got Case of the Month. We've got our Narcometer review. Murph, what are we going to do this month?
Black Klansman.
Black Klansman. If you said Miami Vice, this was going to be over.
No, I screwed that up one time. I won't do that anymore.
No more of that. But we got the Narcometer. We got You Can't Make This Shit Up. 911. What's your emergency? So we got a lot of good things coming up. So visit us, patreon.com/Game of Crimes.
Yeah.
And hey, the other thing too is go visit facebook.com. Just type in Game of Crimes fans. Run by our favorite mafia queen, the Iron Fist with the velvet glove, Sandy Salvato. Get in there. We've got, I think, over 900, maybe, shooting towards 1,000, but a lot of fun stuff. We pull a lot of good stories from that too, as well, Murph. We find some stories from that, like we did last week. A.G. Harris, I don't know if it's IV, the 4th, IV stat, whatever it is. A.G. got us a story last week that we used, so that was fun. And I've got a couple stories we'll talk about in a minute on this one, but just head on over there, Game of Crimes fans, type it in there. And remember, folks, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things for good people, or to good people. We take the story seriously, but according to Virginia Commonwealth law and Florida state law, we don't what?
We don't take ourselves serious at all. Now, our guests, that's different, but we don't take ourselves serious.
And one of the ways we prove we don't take ourselves seriously is a little section that I have to ask you. Are you ready for it, Murph? Are you ready for it? Guess what time it is?
It's time for
Small Town Police Blotter. 007 there. Hey, what I thought I would do, these first 2 stories are not small towns. They are San Diego, but in honor of Michael, I thought I'd get a couple funny stories from San Diego. Then we do end up with a small town story from Florida. Where else, right?
God love it.
Murph, this dude is cold. He is cold and heartless. Stanley McQuarrie, 54, broke into the San Diego apartment of William Ballard around 3:30 a.m., You might ask, why should I care about that? Well, Ballard, who has one leg, was seated in his wheelchair when he confronted the home invader. As he attempted to call for help, McQuarrie pushed the victim off his electric wheelchair, took the victim's cell phone, and then he rode off in the wheelchair with the cell phone, but he didn't get far. San Diego PD was on there. So what happens? He's in an electric, motorized wheelchair. He gets about 2 blocks from the home. When the police show up, and now he is miraculously healed, he hops out and he runs. But Murph, guess what?
What?
Not as fast as a canine.
Yeah, baby, go. I love it.
Hey, as they say, a police service dog was deployed. No, the canine was unleashed. Cujo, man, he's locked up in the San Diego Central Jail in lieu of a $105,000 bond. He's been charged with robbery and burglary and several misdemeanors, including elder abuse. Piece of shit. Yeah. Serves you right. And I'm glad Cujo got Christmas or Thanksgiving dinner early off of you.
There you go. And I hope he bit him right in the butt. He can't sit down now.
Yeah. Hey, Murph, speaking of Florida, we'll get into the second story, but I think this lady in our next story came from Florida because she doesn't know how to drive.
God, she's from Orlando. It's not just Florida.
Well, and Murph, because she doesn't know how to drive, she's going to prison, federal prison for 6 years because Sylvia Mashaya, 34, was arrested. Now, you're gonna, Customs found 27 pounds of meth hidden in the rear quarter panels of her 2006 Ford Focus. But here's the deal, Murph. She came through initial screening. Initial inspection, primary inspection. They said, okay, they talked with her, whatever, they let her go, so they waved her through. Apparently, she doesn't know where to turn left instead of right. Instead of turning left and going back into the United States, she turned right and went into secondary inspection.
Here's your sign.
Here's your sign. And so they say, well, since you're here, let's search you. So they found her, and the meth has what's rule number 1, kids? Don't do meth, right? So she drove her car into the secondary lot, and they decided, hey, we didn't order this, but since you're here, let's take a look. She thought she was home free, but her navigational mishap resulted in her arrest on drug importation charges. She is now serving 75 months in federal prison in Dublin, California, which is about 40 miles east of San Francisco. Guess what, Murph? She's going to, part of her probation conditions, when she eventually gets out, she will be barred from entering Mexico and will be required to participate in a drug or alcohol abuse treatment program. Plus, she's going to be going back through driving school.
So she was taking meth into Mexico?
No, from Mexico into the United States, yeah.
It reminds me of that TV show. I can't remember the name of it, but they used to say, they called the next contestant, come on down.
Yeah, The Price is Right. Yeah.
There you go.
And here, Murph, can't let you get away without one more story from Florida.
Yeehaw.
Stuart, Florida, population 17,245. Salute. All right, Murph, a lot of times people call 911, as you say, 199, right?
199.
This lady should have called 199 instead of 911 because she called Lily Rinker, 23. She called 911 to report that a male friend of hers that she met last week stole something that belonged to her.
Oh, what happened?
Well, she had $30 worth of marijuana in her grinder, but Carlos, quotation marks, departed the room. She noticed half a gram was missing from her stash. So she did not know what to do, so she decided to do what? She called 911. And Murph, to make this even worse for her, you don't call 911 for that. You certainly don't call 911 when you have active arrest warrants for yourself, too. So she failed to show for court in connection with an outstanding criminal mischief case. And the second one, she didn't appear for a probation violation hearing in connection with a DUI conviction. So this time they made it easy for her. They held her without bond.
You know what? For our listeners out there that aren't on Patreon, one of our monthly segments is you can't make this shit up. This is a prime candidate for that episode.
Well, and here's the thing, too. So she was arrested last year for striking her father in the face during an argument. Why? Because she became upset learning that he had posted an online photo of her holding a vape, and she is a college athlete and could not be seen holding a vape. Instead, what does she do? She's got marijuana, criminal mischief, and a DUI. Well, there you go.
There you go, Skippy. You're obviously not going to be a Rhodes Scholar, are you?
Yeah, no, not a Rhodes Scholar. Well, so that was your post-Thanksgiving tryptophan-induced coma stories for you. So, but hey, let's get into this too with Michael, because as we say, where we left off last week, Michael had been involved in now 3 shootings within 18 months, and you're going to hear about some of those too.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the first one is when the headache started. Then he got into the second and the third one, but he got to the point where it was tough to cover up the drinking. It was affecting his home life, and he eventually. I think he didn't want to do it, but I think he saw the writing on the wall. If he didn't do it, he voluntarily went to rehab.
Yeah, it's and we said
I shouldn't say rehab. I'm sorry. Let me correct. I shouldn't say rehab. He went to
counseling.
Counseling, yeah, an intensive 28-day program for counseling.
And to Deanna, who was one of the civilians there that kind of pulled an intervention on him, but then wouldn't accept his BS because he was trying to talk his way out of it. She pushed him. I mean, God bless her for doing that. And we said this last week, and we're going to say it at the outro also. Thank you to Michael for being so transparent and honest and open about your story, because there's so many people that are going to benefit from this. And it doesn't just have to be police officers. It's any first responder. It's anybody that's in an occupation that's extremely dangerous, where you're facing life and death on a daily basis. Or it's just anybody that's suffering from anxiety, depression, maybe having suicidal thoughts. The one thing we want you to remember, 988, that's the national number. I hope I got that right, and I always get that one right. The other one I have fun with, 199, but not this one, 988. It's open 24/7, 365. Somebody there to speak with you if you're having any type of suicidal thoughts, depressive thoughts, whatever it might be. Please call and get help. 988.
Yeah, never go it alone. There's always somebody out there for you. So,
absolutely.
And I'm telling you, like I said, when we got done, it was like after 90 minutes, we said there's no way, and you're going to understand why there was no way to just condense this into 90 minutes. So this is why our second time we're doing this, 2 weeks or 2 episodes in a row now. So now coming up, part 3, Michael Martinez talks about being involved in the shooting and how going through the therapy, going through the counseling, prepared him to better handle being involved in a 4th shooting within 2 years. So, Murph, we can't hear the story until I ask you, are you ready to play and hear about the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes?
I am. And listeners, if you didn't do it last week, we'll do it this week. Get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. You thought last week was interesting? Wait till you hear this one.
All right, we are back. Guys, again, we're making history. We did it with Rick Rambo. Now we're doing it with Michael Martinez, San Diego Police. This is our second 4-part interview. So we're on part 3 of our interview. And where we left off last time, Michael, was you had been involved in your first officer-involved shooting. We talked about getting the headaches, the role beer played with making it go away, and how much fun, that kind of ended up becoming. But while you were still dealing with this, within 18 months, you were involved in a total of 3 officer-involved shootings. So let's kind of pick up from where you were you're back to duty now. But, so now that you're back to duty, is beer still playing a role for you in making the headaches go away during that time?
Correct. Yeah, on a daily basis. So even though I was back out in the street and patrolling again, I was still having those headaches. I would wake up with them. I would go to sleep with them. If I didn't have them in the beginning of the day, I would develop it during the day, whether I was on or off duty. So yeah.
Did you sneak any drinks on duty?
I never did. I do remember I couldn't wait till my shift was over.
So you weren't volunteering for overtime or extra duties and stuff like that?
I was still working. I was working plenty of overtime just because life was already becoming chaotic at home.
Okay.
But I knew that there was going to be an end to my day. There was my shift at some point, whether I was working overtime or I got held over, there was going to be an end to my workday, and that beer was going to come into play. The alcohol was going to come into play.
When you say life was chaotic at home, is that because of the shooting itself?
I would say it was chaotic because I was having those headaches. I was nauseous every day. I was taking naps. Like I was trying to figure things to do to help control the headaches besides the drinking. The arguments at home. The my fuse was short, so every conversation between my wife and I just turned into an argument. Honestly, it could be as little as like, "What do you feel like eating today?" And then it's like, boom, I don't know, just make something. I just got, and it was just, it became chaotic.
When you read that book, and it hit me too when you just said that book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, remember the one part where he's talking about is that when you get home, you're just tired of making decisions. You don't want to make decisions. What are we having? I don't care. I don't want to make decisions. Just I'm tired of making decisions. You decide.
Right. And for me, it's like, I'm not really a picky eater, right? So you could put anything in front of me. I could eat leftovers or whatever it may be. So it was just that. And then again, I think with a combo of the short fuse and the headaches and not feeling good, noise became chaotic. It, when the kids were screaming and yelling, and when I say screaming and yelling, they're just playing, right? They're
Doing what kids do.
doing what
Right.
kids do. Yeah, they were only 2.5 years old and 1.5 years old, and so they're screaming, crying, playing, laughing, and that noise was magnified in my ears. It just things were just too loud. And yeah, I think that all was a result of or the aftermath of the first OIS.
Well, when you were telling us about the arguments with your wife, does she happen to be in the room with you?
No, no, no. I kicked her out of the house for this interview.
I saw you looking over the side like you were waiting to see if a rolling pin was going to smack in the back of the head.
It's like the old joke. What's the first line to every dirty joke? And you see the guy looking over both shoulders going, "Oh, wait a minute, Yeah,
Exactly.
before I talk about my wife, let me make sure she's not behind me with a frying pan.
Yeah.
Right. At least if she did something like that, it would be captured on your guys' camera. You guys would be good witnesses.
Now we're not. Didn't see a thing, sir. No.
I didn't see shit.
I happened to be looking away at that time. I think I went to the bathrooms. Oh, what happened? Oh, I'm very sorry to hear.
If she'll hit you, what do you think she'd do to us?
That's right.
That's funny.
All right. Well, but that's the thing, right? We as cops and stuff, even after the job, it's like you still find humor in dark stuff, right? There's still
right.
You got to find humor. So, everything's starting to get to you at this point, right? So you don't want to make decisions, the kids and stuff. And how does that increase the amount of your drinking you're doing, or does that just make sure you stay drinking? At the same level of what you do. Like there was no incentive to give it up.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say there was really no incentive to give it up. The alcohol was helping with the headaches. I think that was my big that physical pain was my number one, I guess, symptom. I would say, when people say like, what was the worst part of, the aftermath, and it wasn't the arguments, it wasn't the nauseousness or the numbness, it was those headaches, because it was just those headaches would knock you on your ass, as soon as you got off of work. And it wasn't, you're already sitting down on the couch after work anyways. More so when you're feeling like crap, and you're drinking a beer, or on your days off you're trying to take a nap, and it's just those headaches were shitty. They were horrible.
And describe the two things. I think we asked you this before, but it's been a while since our first two parts. But what was your favorite go-to beer? What did you get? And then tell me too about where were the headaches at? Were they, like some people, they get those sinus headaches, they're in front, they're in the side. Describe the kind of headaches you were having.
Yeah, so my headaches would be, it almost felt like it was just like right in the middle of my brain or right behind my eyes. It was, I've had, it wasn't like a migraine or a hangover headache. It was very different. It was like, it was deep. Like it was like a deep pain in my brain. That's the only way I can explain it. It was like a deep pain in my brain. So sometimes I'd feel it like right in the middle of my head. Sometimes I feel it like right behind my eyes.
And what was your go-to beer? What was your flavor of choice during this time?
Oh man, I'm a 805 Pacifico, Modelo, drinker, some IPAs. That's when I started drinking more of the.
You don't drink any of those wimpy Belgian beers, do you?
I'll drink. It depends. It
No, no,
depends.
no. Say no. Say no. You don't. No.
No. Of course I don't. Not
Friends
that.
can
Not
let
that
friends
stuff.
do IPAs. I'm sorry. Just, can't. How could you do? I mean, that's one thing that would make me quit drinking if somebody handed me an IPA and said, "Here, I have a couple of these." I'm sorry, can't do it, pal.
Yeah, and you know what was good about them at the time was that it helped me get to the point a little faster because they're stronger. So some of them can be stronger, right? So um, it helped me get to that point of satisfaction.
How many would it take?
There was right from the beginning. I remember going and grabbing like tall cans, and then it became like the 3-pack of tall cans, and then it became a case, and that would only last maybe uh, 2 or 3 days in the beginning because I'm every day I'm cracking 3, 4, maybe 5. If is in my day off, I'm drinking a little bit more throughout the day to kind of sustain that to keep that headache away throughout the day because it would come back. So if I would drink at 11 o'clock in the morning, and the headache would be gone by, let's say, noon, for example, well, that headache's gonna come back by 3 o'clock. It was just like that headache was constantly there. It never if
How did it affect your sleep?
it didn't. So sleep for the most part it was good. After my first OIS, I was still sleeping. Um, I was
But would the
taking
headaches come while you were sleeping?
yeah, so sometimes I would wake up with them, I would fall asleep with them, and I would take naps throughout the day to kind of help. I was trying to figure out ways to methods, like, hey, pop a couple of aspirin, drink 2 beers, take a nap, and then when I wake up, I'm like, oh man, this I feel good for a few hours, or depending on what time I wake up, I would feel good the rest of the day. If I don't know, wake up at 6 p.m. and I'd be good until I go to sleep. So I was trying to find methods and techniques to kind of keep that headache away, but obviously you can't take naps when you're working. So that
Well, you haven't
that was
worked for the
only.
county then, have you?
Hey, I'm not a firefighter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Well
that's
said.
right. That's why there's no such show on TV called Live FD. Nothing happens at the FD. Hey, well, but between your first, how many months was it between your first OIS and then this stuff started just right after, and your second officer involved shooting? How long of a, or how short of a time span was that?
So 11 months. So my first OIS was May 27th of 2018, and then my second one was April 3rd of 2019. So yeah, 11 months.
So leading up to that, let's talk about the lead up to your second shooting. But leading up to that, like say during the month of April before this happened, were you still consuming that 5 to 6 beers, drinking quite a bit on your days off? Was everything pretty much the same like what you just described? Did it get worse, or were you just more steady state?
Yeah, it was steady. It was nothing. My wife would probably say that uh, it increased, but it didn't. My drinking increased right from the get go. Like again, the 1 or 2 weeks after my first OIS is when I finally had that first beer, and I just remember that headache going away. So it became a daily thing. I never drank on duty. Again, I knew that there was there was going to be an end to my shift, and I was going to be able to have that, those beers, and throw them down and feel better. So there was but yeah, there was no, sometimes I would drink liquor, especially when I was out and about, or, at family functions. If liquor was around, I would take some shots. I would drink some mixed drinks, but for the most part, my go-to was beer, just because I enjoyed it.
Did the headaches affect your on duty work too? I mean, in terms of like, did you feel like maybe you were getting short tempered when you normally would have just let stuff roll off your back? How did the headaches affect you while you were at work?
That's one of the, I would say, I don't know if it's the correct word, but amazing things was that through all of this, my entire journey, um, I was like 120% at work. I was volunteering for overtime. I was working overtime. I wasn't late to work. My paper was on point. My investigations were on point. I wasn't getting complaints from citizens for misconduct or use of force or for being rude on duty.
Or
I
jacking their
was
Modelo.
or jacking jacking their Modelo. Yeah. So I was 120% at work. I would say that I was still volunteering for calls. I was still taking paper from the OGs, helping them out on their beat. So I was still trying to build my reputation, but I was hiding it. Although I was feeling like shit every single day, especially with those headaches, I was bullshitting really good. I was bullshitting my way through it, and
How long did you think you could do this?
I did it for 11 months, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, there was if I look back at it now, I think at some point, I don't know. I was hiding it pretty good. I could probably have done it forever um if it came down to it. Unfortunately, I probably wouldn't have. I was still brand new, so I wasn't going to be the first one, at San Diego Police Department to bitch about headaches or being nauseous or,
I'm sorry. Were you aware of other guys that had been through shootings that were having the same symptoms?
None. I knew from people who had, that I had spoken to who had been involved in officer involved shootings in the beginning. That night when people were calling me and texting me and they told me, hey, you're going to feel like shit tomorrow, but it's normal. You should get back, into feeling better within 4 or 5 days, a week. Don't drink alcohol, don't watch the news. So, um, I was under the impression of, well, nobody else is having these issues. And there's guys on the department who have been in, 4, 5, 6 shootings and they're not bitching about headaches and they're not complaining about, being nauseous. And so I think it was that stigma of, not so much of it. It was not okay to get help, but it was more of the stigma of I didn't hear anybody else talking about it. So I wasn't going to be the first one, especially being a rookie. You don't want to be that. You don't want that attention on you.
But knowing what you know now, were there other people going through it at the same time and they were just covering it just like you were?
Oh, I've talked to people on my department and throughout the nation, from folks in Louisiana and Florida and here in California and Nevada, Arizona. I mean, it's so much more common. These symptoms, these nightmares, the inability to sleep, sleep is one of the first things that actually go right in the profession when we start struggling. It's sleep, but the headaches these are so common, and it's almost like like everywhere I go, people will tell me when after my presentations, they'll tell me stuff like, man, I know exactly what you're talking about, the headaches, or, hey, for the past couple of years, I've been having these headaches. And it's just, some of those people never even been involved in an officer involved shooting. But it's the stress of the job. And I'll get into that later on in my story when I started learning about that cumulative, stress.
You mentioned nightmares too and stuff, and not so much a nightmare, but one of the recurring dreams I had for many years, and it was just, but it was also, and I think a lot of cops that went through this. The one recurring dream, is like your weapon malfunctions and you can't clear it. It's stuck, right? You can't pull. For me, it was I couldn't pull the trigger. It was stuck. I couldn't rack around into it. Just as hard as I would seem to pull, couldn't pull the trigger. I don't know if you heard that same story from others, but that seemed to be one I heard a lot from guys that I talked to.
Yeah, I've heard people have similar stories where, and I've had those nightmares too, where you can't run fast enough from the bad guy that's chasing you, and you're the cop, right? And in your mind at the time, you're running from the bad guy, and you're like, this isn't. I should be running after the bad guy, but he or she's shooting at me, or you can't move out of the way when a car's coming towards you, or you fire your round and it just falls. Like there's not enough oomph to that round, going down range. So there's all kinds of weird dreams. It's weird the way that the fact that we kind of dream the same.
Well, you know what Murph's recurring nightmare is? Somebody's going to beat him to the blue plate special. He just can't run fast enough to get the door in first before it closes.
I can still fight.
Yeah, still
They might beat me there, but we're going to have a
I'm
fight.
still armed. I'm still armed.
I'll get in there and gum my food with the best of them.
That's right. And we've established too what your favorite brand of cat food is. It came from our Patreon episode on our
Friskies
Q&A.
chicken.
So chicken, give me chicken. Well, all right. So let's set the stage then for your second officer-involved shooting, OIS, as you say in the business. So, kind of lead us up into it. What shift are you on? What day is it? Kind of what's going on.
Yeah, so me and my partner, we are working a day shift. So our day shift is our, first watch. It's
I'm
6
sorry, that
a.m.
sounds like the intro to Dragnet. It was day shift. My partner is Bill Gannon.
It was 10 a.m. on the midnight shift.
Yeah, the City of Angels. I carry a badge. Go ahead.
Um,
Dun, dun.
yeah, 6 a.m. 6 a.m. till 4 p.m. is our shift. So and that I remember me and my partner, we my buddy, we still talk about it every now and again. That day, April 3rd of 2019, when we were working first watch, it started off very odd. As soon as we broke lineup at I don't know 6:30 in the morning, I think it was like 7:30 in the morning, a active shooter, basically an active shooter call comes out. There's a male in an apartment complex parking lot, and he's like firing off rounds into unoccupied vehicles that are in that apartment complex parking lot. So everybody goes to that call, and we end up taking that guy into custody. That was the way that morning started, April 3rd of 2019. And then later on, maybe around, lunchtime, like 11 o'clock, noon, there was some like walker or a biker found a body out near the Tijuana River Valley. So, homicide got, I think, homicide got called out to that, and they were handling that. And then at 1:30 p.m., and we didn't really have much to do with that. It was I think it was like a body part or something like that was found. So, like around 1 p.m. comes around, April 3rd of 2019. Me and my partner, we had stopped. We're on the opposite side of the division. We're on the west side of the division, and we stopped a couple of guys in a car that was like 4 deep in a car. And I don't remember all the details. They some gave us consent. Some of them were on paper. They were searchable. They were on probation or parole or whatever. But they all had they were all searchable. So we got them out of the car. I was searching people one at a time. We're having them sit down. We're waiting for another unit to arrive, and I'm start digging into the car, and I start on the driver's side door. And I start on the driver's side of the vehicle, and I start digging around and searching. And I remember I found like dope. I found some dope. I put it on the roof of the car, and I stick my head back into the car, and I'm digging around, and dispatch gets on the air, and the dispatcher airs that there is there was one caller of a Hispanic male, armed with an AK-47, and he was actively shooting inside the trailer park near Willow Road or Willow Elementary School. There's a trailer park right across the street from the elementary school, and this is down in San Isidro. This is on the opposite side of our division. So, I remember sticking my head out the window, and I look at my partner who's standing with the 4 guys, and we kind of look at each other. We're like, at 1 p.m. on a school week, during the weekday, 1 p.m. active shooter, and only one caller. There'd be tons of people calling. People are, especially the school, right? The school would be calling us, and we'd be having a lot more people calling than just one caller. And there'd be times, many times down at Southern Division, you would get, and it's agencies everywhere, right? You get those bogus calls. You get like, hey, there's somebody chasing me with an axe, and he's right behind me, and 5-10 cop cars arrive on scene and the guy's just, tweaked out, or he's having some type of psychiatric emergency, and it's a big bogus call, right? It's a big nothing.
He's having a Morgan moment.
No. Rule number 1 on Game of Crimes, kids, don't do meth. This is what happens when you do meth.
That's what
you
happens.
Pretend you believe people are chasing you with an axe.
Exactly. So we would get those all the time. Like, that was not uncommon where we would get these calls. So so I looked at my partner and we were like, let's wait for another caller. So, all right, cool. Let's wait for another caller. I stick my head back into the car, start searching again. And within seconds, dispatch gets back on the air, and she airs something to the effect of, hey, we have 2 or 3 more callers. Hispanic male armed with an AK-47 inside the trailer park. He's actively shooting. And so we're like, holy shit, right? It's game time. It's, this is what we all train for. This is real. And my heart starts pumping. My adrenaline, I could feel like my adrenaline kicking up. And we hop back into the car.
Hey, real quick, right there, you hop back into the car. Even though you had a hot call, every now and then it's kind of tough to turn people loose like that, right? Like you've got something righteous there, like you said, they were on paper, they're on parole, probation, whatever, they're searchable, they're up to no good, right? But you got to make a decision, don't you? It's like, toss the dope, whatever, tell them get the hell out of there, right?
And you know what? That's a good thing that you mentioned that, because I forgot to mention. So once that dispatcher aired that call, and in our mind we're like, oh shit, this is game time, I grabbed the dope from the roof of the car. I ran over to the driver who was sitting down on the curb. I give him the dope and I said, get the fuck out of here.
You gave him his dope back?
Oh, I gave him the dope. Yeah, I wasn't impounding anything that day. And it's funny because people would say, like, man, you should have at least, like, you could have taken the dope. Like, you could have, like, crushed the pipe on the ground or something. Like, and I was like, man, they're going to get dope and pipe back. That was the last thing on my mind. I was just like,
well,
here's
we're not
your
talking
stuff.
about that. He's got 2 kilos of coke in there. It's like a little bit of weed or something, or
he could have had ARs or something in the trunk, or for all we know, right? I mean, I had just barely started searching the front, but what's the priority, right? Like, the active shooter, that's the priority. Everything else, and it's funny. I was just like, here, get the fuck out of here. And they're, we jump in the squad car, and obviously, we're right behind their vehicle, and all 4 guys are kind of like looking back at us, like they're walking away.
Is this a joke?
Is this a setup? Yeah, they thought they were going to get set up. Yeah. It was so funny. Like, now thinking about it, but me and my partner, we hopped in our car, and we took off. So. Yeah.
So when you say, and give us some geographical context too. So you said it was on the other side of the division. So, when you're in a big town, miles aren't as important as minutes, right? I mean, it could be 3 miles away, but it could take you 20 minutes to get there. So even driving code 3, as they say, lights and siren, how fast were you going to be able to get from where you were to where the shooting was?
That's a good question. Let's see. I would say that it's a good 10-15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe a 10-minute code run with lights and sirens and everything. And we got there, I would say we got there around that time. We got there pretty quick.
So what does that speak to then about the amount of units on the street that day? Like, how were you guys the first ones on the scene, next to the first ones on the scene? You would think with a call like that, people would be coming out of the woodwork. I mean, to respond.
Yeah. So we were number 3 on scene. There was two other officers already there, 2 other units. They were single man units, and then me and my partner, who was a 2-man unit. So we were the 3rd unit on scene, and Able, which is our air support unit, they were already overhead when we arrived on scene. So, but everybody was coming. I mean, detectives were coming from the the station. All the other units were responding. Everybody was coming down at that point.
Also give us a sense too, is like, every agency's kind of has their own way, like they clear the air or emergency traffic. So when you get an incident like this, do you guys go to a separate channel? Do you stay on that channel and they move the other traffic, and then, with air support? So from a radio standpoint and a comm standpoint, how does that work when you've got obviously a major incident like an active shooter?
Yeah. So they for this incident, they put the tone on, which tells everybody to clear the air unless it's specific to which what that call is. So there's a tone that's constantly going on every couple of seconds, and the air just basically stays clear for the units that are arriving on scene. Nothing else gets switched over. Sometimes, depending on how big the incident is or how long it's lasting, they'll switch everybody over to a different frequency. Either the people on that scene or the rest of the division or the rest of the frequency.
All right. So, and then with air support too. So, are you guys able to talk directly to them, or does that only come through dispatch?
Correct. We could hear what they're saying, what they're airing, and we could talk directly to them, and vice versa.
So you're getting there. So so now lay out the scene. So you guys show up. Do you hear anything? Do you hear the shots going off?
Yeah, no. So in my mind, when I'm driving there, I remember thinking to myself, "There's going to be kids laid out," because I've driven there day and night, all hours of the day. There's always kids out there playing, riding their scooter, walking with their parents. There's always kids out there day and night. So in my mind, I was like, "There's going to be kids laid out, and whether dead or alive, I'm going to have to walk past them, and we're going to have to contact this suspect." This is how we train. So that was my thinking. And I remember when I was driving there, I was thinking, man, this is going to fucking suck. What I'm going to see is going to suck. When we get there, as we're arriving on scene, the air support unit spots the suspect on the opposite end, on the south end of the trailer park. And the entrance to the trailer park is on the north side. So the entrance to the trailer park is on the north side. Suspect is on the far south end of that trailer park, and he's not holding a firearm. Per our air support unit, he's not holding on to a firearm. So I park. I get out of the car. Me and my partner get out of the car, and
how far is it from the north entrance to the south where this guy is? 100 yards, 200 yards?
It's a walk. There's probably like 5 rows of I would say maybe a good, easy 200 yards. I would say 150, 200, maybe 100, 150 yards or something like that. I mean, the way it's kind of laid out.
Well, the reason I ask that is because you've got all the concerns too, because you know that there's one shooter, but you don't know if there's two. So it's the other issue of, is there an ambush? Is somebody is around the corner of a trailer? I mean, you've got so many places somebody can pop out at you and pop off a shot.
Right. And one of the descriptions, or one of the updates that dispatch gave us, was that the suspect was hiding behind one of the vehicles, but I think he was still out on the far end of the entrance. So I guess he was like kind of hiding. Somebody had reported that he was hiding behind like some trash bin or a vehicle or something like that. So in our minds, we were thinking, he's waiting for us. He knows we're coming at some point. And so it was just, there was a lot going on. My adrenaline is going. I hop out of the car, and I throw on my hard plates. Obviously, we wear vests underneath our uniform, but our hard plates are supposed to protect us from a higher caliber round.
Especially if you got an AK-47, yeah.
Yeah. So I throw on the hard plates, and I remember snapping one side. There's 2 buckles on each side of your ribs, right? Your rib area. So I snap one side and it snaps, and then I go to snap the other side, and it's not connecting. It's not long enough. And I remember thinking like, man, I know I fucking gained some weight, but I didn't gain that much weight. Not, my uniform, my gear is usually, I use it, I throw it on often and make sure everything is good to go. And I was like, and this is it's not connecting by a lot, not just by a little. It's not connecting by a lot. Well, what I forgot to do is I forgot to take my BWC off of my uniform, my body worn camera, and I forgot to take it off the uniform and switch it over to the transition it to the outside of the plate carrier. So that little bit of 2 or 3 inch give that allowed that didn't allow me to snap the other side of my vest shut.
Did you have a headache at this time?
I don't even remember. Probably not. I would say no. There was nothing bothering me at that time. I was.
That adrenaline kind of acted like the beer would. It just,
Yeah, maybe.
So now, did you get it figured out, or did you just figure, fuck, I'm getting chubby, I got to hit the hit the circuit when I get back?
Yeah, so I'm right there, messing around with it, and then the able unit, our air support unit, he gets back on air and says the suspect just picked up the AK-47 and he's walking northbound through the parking lot. I mean, through the trailer park. So now it came to that point where I'm like, fuck it. I don't know what's going on with this vest, but it's game time. I charge my AR, and me and so there's four of us, four officers on scene. Two officers go one way, me and another guy go the opposite way, so we split up because we know that the suspect is walking northbound, but we just don't know where northbound in this trailer park he's going to pop out of. He could pop out of like right in front of us, or he could pop out 150 yards away, which is at the very end of that trailer park.
And you talked about charging up your AR. So how do part of the training too? I know we talked. We hope to have an episode with the two Nashville cops that took out the Covenant school shooter because we ran into them at the gang conference. And one of the things was with them is even on active shooter, some people were qualified on the rifle, so you had to go through a higher level of training for that. What was it like for you guys? So why did you have the AR? Did everybody have an AR? Or do you guys have designated like some people will be pistol, some people will be long gun? How does that work?
Yeah, so you have to take a class in order to carry the AR on duty, and me and my partner we had taken that class. I'm not sure how many months or maybe a year prior, so we were, I guess, qualified to carry it on duty, and you can take it out when necessary. Obviously, this is a necessary event where we were able to kind of take that out and use it.
So you got your AR charged, and like you say, you're going through the park now. Is the air unit able to keep able to keep an eye on the suspect? What happens now from this point?
Yeah, so I snake in between like these two cars to kind of make sure I have some cover, and I see the suspect about 100 yards away. He pops out on the north end of that trailer park, but at the very, very end of that trailer park, 100 yards away, and he's walking towards me down this like dirt road, and he can clearly see me. I can clearly see him. Although he was far, there was a wooden fence in between him and I, but that wooden fence was broken down. So I mean, we had a clear view of each other. And when I remember him walking towards, walking in my direction, and he had the AK down on his right, to his right hand side. And when he was walking, he was kind of swinging it, not all the way up, but just kind of almost like if he was like marching with it a little bit. Like kind of, I remember the AK kind of swinging, and he was just he was just facing directly in my direction. I felt like we were just looking at each other, and then he brings the AK up in front of him in my direction, and then he fires off a round. And I remember hitting the deck. I hit the deck, and I come back up to take the shot. Again, he's 150 yards away, and I come back up to take that shot, and he runs back into the trailer park. And now the hunt is on. I know. I knew the entire event was real, but now it's really real, right? Like that round, when he cranked off that round, that was the loudest fucking round I have ever heard in my life. It felt like the wind snapped in my ear. It was
And wouldn't you know it too? These dumb motherfuckers don't have to do any training. They just steal something where you had to go through training, and they do this ridiculous thing. They pull one trigger, point a shot, and they end up getting lucky. And it's
right.
like it always amazes me how lucky they get with some of their shots when you see some of the officer involved shooting. So you said you kind of heard that those things can. What was that movie, Heartbreak Ridge? The sound of an AK-47 makes a distinctive sound.
Very, yes, very, very. It was a very distinct sound and it. I've heard other rounds, and sometimes, if you've been to the range, everybody at one point has forgotten to put their ears on. You just forget, and you're like, holy shit, that startled feeling. Well, this is, imagine that sound, but I mean, magnified times, I don't know, 100. I mean, I just remember it just felt like the literally I just felt like the air just split, and it just cracked. I hit the ground. I come back up to take that shot, and he runs back into the trailer park. So now the hunt is on. We go into the trailer park. At the time, from that far away, it looked like he ran back into the trailer park horizontally. But what they say they think happened was that he ran diagonally, and from that distance, I couldn't tell that he had ran diagonally kind of towards us, and he cut that distance between him and I. So I go into the trailer park at this point. I turn the corner onto this road, and I'm expecting him to be on that road somewhere, but 150 yards away, not 80 yards away where he was. And it was, to me, it was surprising. But I remember bringing my AR up right when I saw him. He had the AK down to his right hand side, the way he was kind of marching with it the first time, and he's looking straight at me. I mean, he's clearly looking at me. There's no cover for me. We're both literally in the middle of the street, or in the middle of this road. And I tell him to drop the gun. He starts to raise it in my direction, and that's when I fired off four rounds.
How many hits?
So I hit him 3 times. I hit him. I believe I shot him in the thigh, the chest, and then the other hit the back of his head. And we walk up on him, and he was obviously deceased, but we still got to try to save his life. So there was I remember seeing him, and I remember walking up on him, and I remember his tongue was kind of like sticking out of his mouth a little bit, and his tongue was like purple, and I saw like the hair kind of hanging off the back of his head, so I already knew that there was a headshot. And it was just this kind of moment of silence where you just kind of, me and my partner were just looking at each other like, all right, like, what do we do? And then I'm like, here, take my AR. I'll do CPR. So we start working on him, and then I get relieved by another officer, and the entire homicide process again starts for me.
I saw, for our listeners, you can see a lot of these videos on YouTube, and you also sent the link where we could go onto the San Diego Police Department transparency section.
Right.
I looked at the first one and saw there was almost 500 photographs, and I thought, I'm not looking at 1,500 photographs in 3 shootings.
Yeah.
But I saw the video from the helo, and somehow their angle, and it must have been right when the shooting was going on, because they lost sight the way that they were circling around, and there's a building or something in the way. And that must have been when the shooting went down. So you lost your eyes in the sky there.
Yeah, so the Abel lost sight of him once he fired off that round, and then he ran back into the trailer park. They lost sight of him, and it was they didn't pick the suspect up until after he had been shot.
Yeah, he was down.
So what was this? So, and we're not going to give airtime to the name of the suspect. I mean, people who do that stuff, they don't need airtime. But what was the major malfunction for this guy? Mentally ill, homeless? I mean, what precipitated this whole shooting? Was he aggrieved, angry? What?
Meth. I believe all my the suspects that were involved in my incidents were all under the influence of some controlled substance, alcohol, meth, combo of both.
That's our number one rule, kids. Don't do meth.
Don't do meth. And was he a known quantity to San Diego PD or the sheriff's office? Was this guy on the radar?
I never had contact with him, and I never asked if what his background, what his story was. I never really been interested in any of those details, but I'm not too sure what his history was.
Well, so and I know we're getting to this, but I got to go ahead and ask: did the headaches continue, or did they go away, or did they intensify?
I had a headache that night, so I remember doing CPR on the suspect, an officer came to relieve me, and they're starting to pull me out of that trailer park. And I remember going out to the street side, and I remember one of my peer supporters. He was, I mean, everybody was by that time. Everybody was there. There was lieutenants, captains, people from other divisions. They were already on scene, and my peer supporter officer told me, "Hey, call your wife." Or he asked me, "Did you call your wife yet?" And I said, "No. I haven't called her. I'll text her or something." He goes, "No, call her. She needs to hear your voice. She's going to hear about this. She needs to hear your voice, and she needs to know that you're okay. Call her." The interesting thing was that me and my wife, we hadn't spoken in 3 days to each other. Up until that point, we were, where I was telling you guys that everything was turning into arguments, and it was just those, I'd come home and we wouldn't say anything to each other unless it had to do with the kids, and we were just kind of ignoring each other. So we were in one of those 3-day fights, and I call her, and she, I call her. Remember, I haven't spoken to her in 3 days. I haven't texted her, I haven't called her. So I call her, and she answers the phone, and she's like, "What?" And I was like, "Hey,
I've had those calls."
Yeah, exactly. She's just like, "What?" And I was like, "Hey, I got into another shooting, and I'm gonna be late tonight." And she's like, "What?" So I get taken back to the station, and I remember every single. Sorry, that snorting sound. That's my dog.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, okay, good. Let me make a noise so she doesn't. There we go. Wake her up a little bit.
Well, let's make sure she's not snorting meth. We don't want to have an incident in your house. No meth in your house, right? Take the dog out.
Yeah, no meth in my house. So what was I saying? So I get taken back to the station and to Southern Division, and I remember there was all the brass was there, all the chiefs were there. It felt like every captain, every lieutenant. I mean, the entire division was filled with brass, and people were coming up to me and they were saying, "Hey, you're a hero. You saved lives today. We're proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. Job well done." Like all these really kind things that they were saying to me, but I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like shit. I felt like shit because I didn't understand why this was happening to me again, right? One OIS in our careers, whether you're federal, tribal police, it doesn't matter, school PD, city, county, state, one OIS in your career is probably never going to happen. It's like 87% will never be involved in an officer involved shooting. I had just done it twice in 11 months. And I'm a shit magnet at work anyways. Like I'm always involved in everything that's going on at work also. And I just couldn't understand why me? Why was this happening to me? So I felt really, I didn't feel like a hero. I was more like, fuck, how can this happen to me again?
Did you second guess yourself more on this shooting versus the first one?
No. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I knew that I did what I had to do. I remember all the details clearly. The only detail that when I gave my interview or my statement to homicide was I think I said something. They asked me, how far away was he when you shot? And I think I said something like he was like 20 yards, like he was right in front of me. And they were like, 20 yards? Like, are you sure? And we went out in the hallway, and he walked, I don't know, like 20 feet, however long the hallway is. And I was like, yeah, it's about right there. And once the paperwork came out and it showed that he was like, we were about 75 yards away from each other or something to that effect. I was like, shit, there's no way we were that far. Like he looked so big, like I couldn't have missed him, and I've gone back before, I've gone back after, and I've looked to see, and it was a pretty decent distance.
You're not to blame for that, because remember, guys always say, they always tell women, right, this is 6 inches, right?
Oh.
Sorry, you're not to be blamed for being a bad judge at this.
Yeah. Okay. It must be a guy thing then.
It's a guy thing.
Do you remember getting tunnel vision during this time?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was tunnel vision. I mean, he was such a big he was such a big target at the time, and I was when I shot, when I was shooting standing up on the move towards him. He was standing up on the move towards me, and and that's a pretty tough, I think, shot for, I think it'll be a tough shot for most people, but it was just in my mind. I was like, "There's no way I'm going to miss him." He just looked so big, so close.
Wow.
What so we're not going to spend as much time with this as we did the other one because we kind of understand your process, but of working through the case, like homicide gets in your stuff. But
Right.
let's close out on this for a second. Anybody hurt? Anybody injured during this, or was he shooting at empty stuff? Did everybody come out okay?
Yeah, everybody came out okay. There was nobody had been shot. I think he was just shooting at, I don't know what he was shooting at, but yeah, there was nobody injured.
All joking aside, meth will do that to you. Now, with this time though, you knew what it was like the first time and how long you were sidelined. How did it go the second time in terms of how long were you on the bench? What happened? How long before you came back? And because it was your second shooting, did they make you go through additional stuff that you did not have to do on your first one?
Yeah, I just remember taking a. I can't remember how long it took for me to get back to light duty. I was giving that acting detective position again. I was out for about 3 months. This one was a little quicker, maybe 2.5 months. And but I remember after the shooting, that's when additional symptoms began. The inability to sleep came into play, and I found myself, from the time that I went home that night. I woke up, at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was like wide awake. Well, that became a regular thing for me. I started having trouble falling asleep. I had trouble staying asleep. There were times I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I would just be up until 6 when I would have to go back into work because I was given that light duty position again, the acting detective position again. So um, sleep became sleep sucked. I wasn't sleeping much. There'd be days where I'd go, 24 hours without sleeping. I'd go to work, I'd wake up, I'd go to work, I wouldn't sleep the entire night, and then I'd go back to work again. And I was just on desk duty, so I was tired. I still had my headaches, but nobody knew. Uh, Wife had an idea because there would be times that she would come out into the living room and she's like, "What are you doing?" Or who are you texting? Because 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't sleep. I finally got out of bed, and I'm just in the living room on my phone watching TV. And she's like, "Who the fuck are you talking to?" At 3 o'clock in the morning, who you texting? And that didn't.
Jake from State Farm. That's who I'm
Yeah,
talking to.
exactly. That's exactly. I see that commercial. I was like, man, that was me when I was a mess.
Oh,
So what did you do during this time? Was this just another opportunity to drink more? What did you do when you were awake?
Yeah. So what I started doing is I started drinking more. I started drinking a lot more because I was able to turn it off. You get, I wouldn't say drunk every night, but you're getting to that point, close to that point, and you're able to kind of knock out. And even though I was groggy and tired the following day, for me it was worth turning off my brain just for a few hours because I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't get a good rest, and it was working. You drink, more than, 2, 3, 4 tall cans, or whatever it is, and you will fall asleep, and it's probably not the best sleep, but
How
um,
much a month do you think you were spending on beer?
oh gosh, I don't even know. I don't have no idea. I always had beer at the house, so yeah, I'm
I
not
mean,
too
you
sure.
couple $300-400 a month at least, right?
Yeah, and then you're going out with people at work or with family, and family functions and dinner. You go out for a simple dinner and you're drinking. So yeah, I'm not. I never even thought of that.
Anybody pull you aside and yank your chain and say, WTF over, dude, you're drinking too much? Anybody tried to hold you personally accountable for how you were acting or what you were doing?
No, nobody knew. Even at work, I wasn't, when I would go out with people
Come on.
from
Well, your
work.
partner had to know.
nobody really knew that I was drinking every day at work, at home, because I wasn't doing it at work. And we wouldn't go out after work every single day. My partners, the people in my squad, I think they probably heard me saying things like, man, my fucking head hurts today, or, or I'm tired. But when I say that I was 120% at work, I kid you not, like I was flying under the radar because I was good. I never called out sick. I was not late. First person to raise my hand and volunteer to stay after after work if we were shorthanded on patrol. I didn't want anybody knowing, kind of what I was doing. I was kind of hiding it amongst my good buddies also. But they would see me drink, at the bar when we all go out. But I never got crazy. I never went overboard with it.
And I know we're going to address this here in a little bit because we want to talk about your third shooting, but as it leads to us about what you ended up happening in terms of your treatment. But don't you think that's kind of a flaw in the way that law enforcement, I can tell you for years it was taboo to talk about suicide. Nobody could talk about suicide, even though we lose more cops each year to suicide than we do, officer involved shootings, felonious assault. So what was the taboo? Why was it so hard? You think at that time for you, even now, you've been involved in your second shooting. I don't want to say you're no longer a rookie, but it's kind of like, man, you're deep in the shit now. What was it about the culture that just prevented people from saying, hey, this is what's happening, and I think I need some help? Was it still the fears that they're going to yank you, pull you, put you on the bench, turn you into a parking meter, attendant, or what?
I think for me, it may have been just the maybe ego where I didn't want to be known as that one officer who couldn't handle it, or who was complaining about headaches, or who's complaining about that they can't sleep. Because what it was I didn't hear anybody talking about it. I knew at the San Diego Police Department, we've always had a wellness unit, an employee wellness unit, and they have peer support and chaplains, and they have psychological services. And that's ever since I started at the academy. The wellness unit has always been pushed where, like, hey, this is resources available for employees to get help and, speak up. That's all good, but I didn't hear any of my folks talking about it. I didn't hear any officers talking about the symptoms. So I didn't want to turn something positive, like a good shoot, into something negative where now it's like, oh, you're a fucking rookie, you can't handle it. Maybe you don't have life experience. Maybe this isn't the job for you. I didn't know if that was the way I was going to be seen as, like, as weak, maybe. But for the most part, San Diego PD, throughout my entire career, there's never been a stigma about, like, being weak or utilizing resources, because the wellness unit, I'm saying the wellness unit and peer support has been around for years. So that culture with San Diego PD has changed over the years. But for me, I just didn't hear people talking about it. So I didn't want to open my mouth and be the first one.
Yeah, so you don't want to be the first one. So between this second shooting and the first one, were you back to work much faster, back to regular duty on the second shooting versus the first one?
Yeah, so I was back to duty after about 3 months. And, going back to my, the inability to sleep, and I'm starting to drink more. Well, it was about 2 weeks after my OIS was when the nightmares started and the paranoia started. And when I talk about paranoia, it was like if
What
I
were you
was
paranoid
smoking meth.
about?
So I would wake up from my nightmares thinking that there was somebody outside my house. I'd go and grab my gun. I'm clearing the house at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking outside my kitchen blinds multiple times, and I'm looking at shadows.
You're almost acting like somebody who's a meth head or a dope head that's
Oh
worried that
yeah,
the FBI is watching them, right?
yeah. That's why when I would see people out on the street, I'm like, man, I kind of know what that feels like, because it feels fucking real. Like, in my mind, I I truly believed that I think somebody was outside my house. Like, I think I heard somebody outside my house. And what was that shadow? What, like, and my wife would come out
Was
sometimes, and
that
she's
like
like,
that fake dog you just said you had, where you had to go take care of your fake dog?
yeah, yeah, hey, quiet, you're snoring. Yeah, it was crazy. And my wife, she would come out, and I remember one time I was like staring out. I was opening the blinds and I was looking out at shadows, and I'm shaking. I'm shaking, and I could feel my heart beating out of my throat. You could feel your heart beating in your eardrums. That's how bad my nightmares were sometimes, and I'd wake up just scared or crying or sweating or kicking and screaming. But I'd be out in the kitchen, and I'm looking out my blinds at shadows, and my wife would come out and she's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I would be like, "Shh, shh, 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 quiet, quiet, quiet." And she's looking at me like, "What the fuck?" Like. And then we had young boys at home, right? And I'm clearing the house.
Did you ever have any close calls to where, like, she snuck up on you or something happened? Did you ever have any close calls in the house because of that?
No, no, never. But there was quite a few times where there was things that had startled me. I remember, like, I don't know if it was her or the kids that had dropped like a cup, and the way that it hit the tile. It was like a plastic cup, but the way it hit the tile, I like I jumped up, and I'm talking about like your heart is literally like it's pounding, and your back is starting to sweat, and I mean it happened like that. It just the the sweat just came, right away. It was crazy. I remember one time eating dinner with at a family's house, and it was like Fourth of July or I don't know, Memorial Weekend or Veterans Day or some event, and somebody lit off a firecracker, and I jumped out of my seat. I knocked orange juice all over the table, and I went to kind of lift my shirt, like, to grab my, I was off duty, and I went to like kind of grab my gun. I didn't grab my gun, but I went to go lift my shirt, and I realized, what was happening. There was some people who kind of laughed, and then, but I was like embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, like that was, and I laughed it off, but there was never any, thank God, right? There was never any close calls where, I'm pointing the gun at my wife or anything, but she would tell me like, hey, you're screaming, or she would wake me up and she'd be like, hey, you're screaming, or you're crying, and I would literally be like crying. um
Did you remember your dreams?
yeah, I remembered, and kind of what we talked about is like, you're being chased by the bad guy, or I can't pull my gun out of my holster, or it's not coming out, or I can't get out of my car, and for some reason I'm in the back seat. I remember this dream where I'm like in the back seat of my car, and I was like, what the hell? I was just driving, and now I'm in the back seat, and there's no freaking door handles, and I got to get out. And yeah, it just different nightmares. A lot of it was just or that feeling like you're falling off a cliff. I had those a ton. uh
Where you basically startle and you wake up out of bed because you felt like you've just fallen off a cliff, and it's like you startle. I mean, it's like your
Yeah.
body violently moves, it jerks awake because you feel like you're falling.
exactly, exactly. And the nightmares, when I say they felt, all of this felt real. It felt, I thought people maybe have recognized me when I was out and about and followed me home, and or maybe the homies found out where I lived, or some way, somehow, social media put my address, on social media, and people. I truly believe that there was nights where people were outside my house, or I was being followed. It was a horrible time. But with that being said, um, my drinking picked up even more, because if you get fucked up every night, not just drunk, but if you're getting fucked up every single night, which I started doing, you do not have any nightmares, because now I understand that your brain doesn't go into REM sleep.
And you know what? The brain has a difficult time distinguishing between reality and a nightmare. To the brain and stuff, it's all real. That's why you react with the heart, the nervous system, the sweating and everything, because the brain, you at that level, you believe it's really happening to you.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I started doing. I started getting fucked up nearly every single night.
How much would it take for you to get fucked up enough to where you could sleep?
At that point, it was like I started drinking a little bit more liquor, and then more, just kind of mixing it, liquor and beer. And
was there ever any temptation to move to pharmaceuticals?
No. I never. I mean, that's the most pharmaceuticals I did was just a Tylenol and aspirin, trying to get rid of those headaches. But no, I never dipped into any narcotics or anything like that.
Hey players, that is the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out, as always, on Tuesday. In the meantime, go check us out at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. Also, go check out our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot more information there, including our book list. Any book written by our guests will be listed there. In the meantime, go check us out also, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. It's where we put a lot more content you won't hear on our regular podcast. We go into a lot more topics, and folks, it is a lot of fun. So go check us out, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. In the meantime, everybody stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow for part 2.